Data collection by Joe Gregory. The case study method is an extremely in-depth study of a particular situation. It is an observational study, which means that the researcher doesn't intervene with what the participant decides. This study is more of an opinion-based study rather than a statistical one, as it is a qualitative study. There are no set of rules that must be applied, and this study is often undertaken on a single person, but it may be a group, such as a football team. The advantages of this study is that it is very real. It doesn't give false information and gives a detailed insight to whatever data is being collected. The disadvantages are that there is low reliability, as there is no way to tell if the participant is truthful or not. It is also a subjective test, which means the researcher could be biased, and this may lead to false impressions. This is accompanied by the fact that memory recall is needed from the participant, and the memories recalled may be distorted somewhat. An example of this research would be forming a case study on the number one gymnast in the world and looking at their fitness components as well as things such as their personality and interests to give us a deep insight into how they have developed to be the number one gymnast. Cross-sectional research is an observational study like the case studies, but is less in depth. As it is observational, it includes recording information without manipulating the environment. It is the collection of data from a cross-section of a population at one point in time, otherwise known as a snapshot, which is a single cross-sectional design. This form of research can be used to compare different variables. One variable is kept the same throughout, and others are recorded as information. One example of this would be if you were comparing young British gymnasts, then one variable, such as the event they're specialist in, would be kept the same, and habits, such as what they eat, how much they sleep, and their day-to-day activities, would be measured and recorded. This way of researching can suggest the causes and effects of habits it is focusing on, but it cannot prove them. Longitudinal research is an observational study which measures the same variables over a long period of time. It is useful to examine the developmental characteristics of a group, which means how characteristics change over time. The usual format of this research is that a group of people are studied for a specific variable. For example, with young British gymnasts, it could be how many points they score in all of the events. And after a set amount of time, which could be up to decades, the test is re-administered on the same group to see what characteristics have changed. The gymnasts would come back in, say every 3 months for 5 years, and this would allow the researcher to see what developments have been made. This form of research is mainly used to study health outcomes and risk factors. Correlational research is a quantitative method. It is used to determine whether or not two variables correlate in any way. It does this by looking at the increase or decrease in a chosen variable and whether or not it affects other variables, seeing if an increase or decrease is caused. If an increase in one variable leads to an increase in another, then there is a positive correlation. At the same time, the same can be said for decreases. If an increase in one leads to a decrease in another, or vice versa, This is a negative correlation. If two variables don't lead to a change in each other, then there is no correlation whatsoever. If young female British gymnasts were having this research method used on them, then the researcher may increase the amount of supplementation that is being taken and observe to see how it affects performance levels, for example, as this would show the correlation between the supplementation levels and performance levels. Experimental research is a quantitative study, as well as being an objective form of research, which means it has more validity and less bias due to the results being factual rather than opinion-based. The control of variables is key, as many different ones can obscure results if they aren't controlled, which would lead to the results being unreliable. Careful measurement must be used to make sure the results are recorded accurately, and false ones are not obtained. The cause and effect of what happens in this type of research can be proven, which is effective as other types of research cannot prove this. A hypothesis is created and an independent variable is manipulated so that this hypothesis can be tested. All other extraneous variables are controlled so that they don't affect results, and the dependent variable must be measured and recorded. Repeated measures is where the same group of participants are used for different tests so that data can be collected from them. This can be also known as related design. Independent groups is where different participants are used in each condition, whilst matched pairs is where each group of participants is carefully matched on all the variables considered relevant to the experiment, so so that so that results can be so that the results between the matched pairs can be compared and analysed. An example of how this method would be used with young British gymnasts would be testing the hypothesis: the more body weight you have, the lower the score you get on the rings. This hypothesis could be tested using different gymnasts with different body weights, comparing their scores to see if the hypothesis can be proven or disproven.